Once upon a time, in the busy city of San Francisco, there lived a man named Gardner. He was in his early 30s, with short curly hair and deep, thoughtful eyes. He wore simple clothes and carried a heavy machine everywhere he went. That machine was called a bone density scanner, a medical device he hoped would help him earn a good living. Chris wasn't rich. In fact, he was struggling to pay rent and feed his family. But he had something greater than money. He had hope. He had a dream. Chris lived with his wife and his 5-year-old son, Christopher. The little boy had bright eyes, curly hair like his father, and a heart full of joy. He loved dinosaurs and bedtime stories. He trusted his dad more than anyone in the world. Chris loved him deeply, more than anything on earth. But life was hard. Chris had invested all his savings into those scanners. He believed they would sell easily, but most doctors said no, they already had cheaper options. So every day, Chris carried that heavy box through the streets, visiting hospitals and clinics, hearing rejection after rejection. He walked for miles, hoping to sell just one. Sometimes he did. Many times he didn't. The bills kept growing. The rent was overdue. The stress was rising. And one day, his wife couldn't take it anymore. She packed her things and left. She said she needed a better life. Chris begged her to stay, but her heart was already gone. Chris was now alone with his little boy. Most people would have given up, but Chris looked at his son, held his tiny hand, and said, "I got you. Don't worry, we're gonna be okay." One day, something changed. Chris saw a man parking a shiny red Ferrari. The man wore a suit, looked confident, and was smiling. Chris walked up to him and asked, "What do you do, and how do you do it?" The man laughed and replied, "I'm a stockbroker." That word stuck in Chris's mind like a bright light. Stockbroker. He didn't know exactly what it meant, but he knew this. That man looked free. That man looked happy, and Chris wanted that, not just for himself, but for his son. So he started asking questions. He found out about a stockbroker training program at a company called Dean Witter. The program was hard. It didn't pay any money. It lasted 6 months. And in the end, only one person would be chosen for the job. Most people would have said, "No way." But Chris said, "Let's try." He applied. He got an interview. But on the very day of his interview, something terrible happened. He was arrested. He had parking tickets he hadn't paid, and he had no money for bail. When he was released the next day, he ran straight to the office. Wearing dirty clothes, no jacket, no tie. He looked like a mess, but he told the truth. He spoke from the heart, and they gave him a chance. Chris was now in the training program. He worked all day, answering phones, studying, learning, fighting for his dream. But since there was no salary, he still had to sell his scanners on the side. It was like running 2 races at the same time, one with his mind and one with his body. Then things got even worse. They were kicked out of their apartment. Chris had no money left. He and his son slept in shelters, sometimes even in public restrooms. One night, they hid in a subway bathroom. Chris sat on the floor, holding the door shut with his foot, hugging his son in the dark. His eyes filled with tears, but he stayed silent. He didn't want his son to be afraid. During the day, no one at the office knew. They didn't know he was homeless. They didn't know he stood in line every night to get a bed. Chris smiled through his pain. He worked harder than everyone. He made hundreds of calls. He memorized the names of clients. He studied during lunch breaks. And when he picked up his son from daycare, he was always kind, always gentle. He never gave up. One day, the boss called him into an office. Chris sat down, nervous. He thought of all the nights he slept on the floor, all the times he skipped meals, all the days he worked with tired eyes and an empty stomach. The boss looked at him and said, "Chris, I have good news. We'd like to offer you the job." Chris froze. He couldn't speak. His eyes filled with tears. He nodded, smiled, and shook the man's hand. Then he walked outside, into the sunlight, into the crowd, and clapped his hands softly. It was a quiet celebration, a moment only he could truly understand. That day, Chris became a stockbroker. Years later, he opened his own firm. He became a successful businessman. He became a millionaire. But none of that mattered more than one thing. He had kept his promise to his son. This story is not just about success. It's about love. It's about belief. It's about holding on when life tries to break you. Chris didn't win because he was lucky. He won because he refused to give up. He didn't have money. He didn't have help, but he had a reason. A small boy with big eyes and a big heart. Life will sometimes push you down. You may lose everything, but if you keep walking, if you keep believing, if you work hard, one day the door will open. Never let anyone tell you that you can't do something, not even yourself, because happiness is not something that just happens. It's something we fight for. It's something we chase. And one day, if we never stop trying, we find it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget, like this video, double-check subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, because sometimes one simple story can change the way you see your whole life.